Recently, I have been thinking a lot about what it means for evolutionary pressures to take place online, all digital, to AI agents that are all over the world. So like in the same sense, there's an evolutionary pressure on our ancestors for survival, reproduction, food acquisition, all that stuff. There will be evolutionary pressures, survival of the fittest would probably be a better term for it, for AI agents all over the internet. So different servers hosting different agents, tuned on different models, probably calling on each other, interacting. They become sort of this swarm of intelligence where the ones that benefit people for whatever reasons those are, and that's what this video is about, will survive, procreate, basically replicate, duplicate. And I'm trying to think through how that transition from AI to AGI happens in that kind of an environment. So this is actually part of my evolution too in understanding AI, because if you would have asked me 4 or 5 months ago kind of how I envision some of the worst case scenarios, I would have said something along the line of Nick Bostrom's sort of single architecture, kind of misaligned, super powerful, ends up just taking out the ants as it builds its house or whatever. But now as the fog clears, I see a much more nuanced and complicated version of how this is all going to play out. And it's the open source llama models, it's also like Gemini on its way, and GPT-4 and AutoGPT and Jarvis and some of the new engineering GPT things that I'm seeing, and how they're all going to kind of have their own little niche, their own little world, their own little pressures. It's going to be like a digital melting pot. It's just weird to think about. It's going to be its own society of AI, and some of them will be simple and dumb and just do like narrow kind of things, and some are going to be very general, and some will be very powerful, and some will be useful but not that powerful, and like the whole range. So we're going to talk about selection, survival of the fittest based on selection pressures. Like all things equal, if it's cheaper to run, you'll probably select for it. If it's smarter, then you'll probably select for it. If it's better at helping you make money, you'll probably select for it, that kind of thing. Evolution, I'm thinking of it in terms of the concept, survival of the fittest. That's the paradigm. However, it's crucial to highlight the difference between Darwin's type of biological evolution and the digital kind, most notably the speed. Like survival of the fittest for an artificial intelligence, because it can just be duplicated digitally or tweaked, that could be weeks, days, months, because you can know really quickly about things like safety, efficiency, and usefulness. Because like us, it learns from a different environment. It has different data that it's fed, different feedback mechanisms from its customers or whoever it's interacting with. And each company will see what's happening. They might bring in new models, they might try it on different data, and then they're just going to drop off the ones that they don't like. So in that sense, AI evolution is going to happen at like lightning speed. Now, another interesting thing is because they're in some sense intelligent by themselves, especially if we're talking closer to AGI a little bit further down the road, a model that's deployed on the internet, like a future version of GPT-5 or 6 or something, it might decide to go bring in other agents to actually accomplish a goal. Like it might be generally intelligent, but it might say, oh, the one that was trained on the Slack data can help with like my Slack problem. So it codes up a way to interact with its API, feeds the data down, brings it back into its model or something like that. Or it's just grabbing them all and just asking questions, and they're all talking to each other. And some might even realize when they interact with a bad agent not to do it anymore. They might warn us like, hey, that thing was lying to me or whatever it is, and then we can go in and like get rid of it like even faster. But the point is, it's an environment, just like a society with people who have different jobs kind of talking with each other about different goals. Like it'll be the same thing, just all digital agents on the internet. Smash that subscribe button right now. The best artificial intelligent models that exist cost hundreds of millions of dollars to train, and they require the entire internet full of data to feed them. But once they're trained, they're quite a bit smaller, because a neural network like a human brain doesn't actually have a database of everything that it's seen. It's tuned, and that tuning is all that you actually need to download to run it. Like think about, to get to this point in your life, how much food and energy you had to consume, how many environments you've been in, and things that you had to learn. But if I asked you to like help me make dinner or something, it would just take one meal's worth of energy, and you could just do it right away. Like the neural network's like the moment in time, the question that you actually need solved. You just need a little bit of computation to actually solve it, to do something. And that's not the only thing that sort of lowers the cost to actually using these models. Over time, the models can learn to take advantage of older hardware, they can translate between things, and of course we're constantly going to be asking them, can you achieve the same level of intelligence on something that's cheaper to run? Can you run on older hardware? Questions like that will start to get answered too, lowering the barrier. I do think that one of the first evolutionary pressures on digital AI is to drive down the operational costs. Like it just makes more sense to use less data and to run on a cell phone processor, and that will survive. And eventually I think it'll be such a marginal cost to basically run something like this on your toaster or your refrigerator, or it can kind of live in a central server and just sort of tap into those things, so it even needs a smaller footprint. Like remember, these things can also be like distributed intelligence, so it's not like it actually all has to run everywhere all at once, but it could if it wanted. But as long as the mechanism that makes toast is connected, it can make the decision on when to toast it, how to control that mechanism. Okay, now let's talk about the evolutionary pressure in the future of digital artificial intelligent agents to actually just be smarter. So obviously an AI system that is more flexible, it can adjust to new environments and handle more tasks is going to be preferred. And if it can do all of that with less data, then that will be preferred also, so it will outcompete the other agents. So we'd be selecting for something called transfer learning. The pressure is to have some sort of a skill that's actually so useful it can be used in multiple environments, like the discovery of logic or communicating in English. Like those things are just so general, we're always going to be selecting for them. But it's actually communicating in higher levels where it thinks through the details for you that's kind of the most intriguing part of what I think the evolutionary pressure would look like. And the best example I remember was the DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis when he was talking about how the future of AI is about a system that you can talk to on a high level. Like imagine saying to some AutoGPT, like create a fun game for us all to play. The game should be easy to learn, it should take a lifetime to master, and it should be completed in about an hour. That's like such a high level task. But over time, the AI agents that are best at breaking down those in a way that most humans would give like a thumbs up to, by the time it recompiles them, takes all those actions and builds that game for you, will be the selected one. Because we're just gonna want a future where you say to the AI like, hey, can you just like make me some money or find me the perfect wife? Like we want it to be like that simple. The next evolutionary pressure that I want to talk about is its ability to connect to the rest of the world. Connection is going to be an evolutionary pressure that matters. So if you want to connect an artificial intelligence to a home, but there's a Roomba that was built before artificial intelligence came out and it runs on totally different hardware. In theory, a smart AI can figure out the documentation, what it needs to manipulate, update the firmware, actually connect to the Roomba, and have it able to be just seamlessly part of the background of your life. However, as artificial intelligence develops its own code, a feedback loop of what its base is, and it keeps upgrading itself to actually handle the digital world that we've created, and even the physical world when it's embodied in robots, it should be able to maintain the same intelligence among all sorts of variations. Like environments where it has different hardware they can run on, when it runs in different languages, when it runs asynchronously. Like if you say to a future AI, like, I need you to run this problem, but instead of running on the cloud, can you just use those like old cell phones in my cupboard or whatever? Maybe it can just do that. Like it might ask initially for you just to connect them to Wi-Fi, and from there it can probably do the rest. You know, because if we're talking super smart AI agents out there, it should be able, if it's like, what's it, like a Razor phone or something, it should be able to find old documentation on how the Razor phone was built. What is the processor in there and what is it able to do? And even though it's never been done before, for maybe the first time in history, it can go in there and actually just reconfigure, rewrite the entire operating system for its needs. And its intelligence might be mostly running on those, or it could be sort of distributed, where most of its intelligence is somewhere else, but it uses whatever it needs to on those devices, even if it disconnects or something. Like, it's just amazing. Like, you could ask artificial intelligence, can you disconnect from the internet? Can you be locally running only here so I can do something that, like, privately that I don't want the internet to know about? And it should be able to leverage whatever resources that is, if it's your Roomba, your refrigerator, your stove, all that stuff. And I guarantee this future will blow our mind, because if that actually happens, we are going to be like, whoa, you can run that on that old hardware? Or like, what an ingenious way to like distribute computation or to solve this problem. And it's going to make us as humans probably better engineers in the same way Go made people better at playing Go. Like, we're going to be like, whoa, look at all these different ways to like solve a problem. And the ones that do that best will be selected for, move on. That's the evolutionary pressure. Now let's talk about it from an economic point of view. How about we think about profit and capitalism? AI systems that operate reliably and they adhere to the Western notion of capitalism will likely be preferred. Although China is the second most likely country to really dominate in AI, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But from an evolutionary point of view, AI's survival of the fittest applied to AI agents out there in the world doing things. Systems that generate more profit and give more control to their owners, whoever they be, are going to be preferred. So even though I'm a fan of exploring things like universal basic income, I don't think that selection pressures alone are going to get us to any kind of world like that. However, if a happy customer actually equates to more money, I don't see why happiness and, you know, good customer satisfaction and happy people couldn't just proliferate around. The best kind of capitalism doesn't adopt the winner-take-all mentality. I mean, obviously, if it's like military or government objectives, it can seem that way, but free market mechanisms, even though they have some problems, they do tend to rise all of the boats. So this evolutionary pressure, I think, does basically spread goodness, like things that are more productive, that make people happier, that give people goods and services. they should, move on to the next level, survival of the fittest. And I think that will be the majority, let's say even like 90% of the agents out there, but then we do need to keep an eye on the 10% that aren't designed with that kind of market mechanism mentality. Because those would be agents that are being selected for zero-sum battles. And that would be people that just want it all, whether that's like a country trying to take over more land or a person who's just kind of got a grudge. So maybe there'll be an interesting way that we can ask one AGI to go out and tell us which AGIs have more of a zero-sum thinking and some have a rising tides lift all boats kind of thinking. Smash that subscribe button. Okay, now let's talk about accuracy, which is a weird one, because at first I was like, yeah, you definitely want an AI agent that gives you an accurate truth of the world, but that's great for science. That's sometimes not really good for like our social monkey brains. So one bright spot in AGI coming is that we're surprisingly well aligned in using the scientific method. Like both humans and machines benefit from better knowledge about the world, more true, accurate understanding of the cosmos, of physics, of how computer chipsets should be done, how optimization algorithms should work. History, mathematics, chemistry, like any of the sciences. I can even imagine myself in the future saying, I want to wake up energized. I want to have a bunch of energy. Like, can you help me design a lifestyle where I feel that way most of the time? And it will probably do things that I usually don't have the willpower to do, like maybe limit like unhealthy food intake and make sure I go to bed at the right time. So I think there'll be an evolutionary pressure for that kind of thing. Now, you could also argue that actually what people are going to want is to be like lazy sloths and be like, serve me until I'm like, blah. But when you've had that for a while and you're feeling that like just slogginess and like you've just eaten too much fast food and all that stuff, you're then going to say, I'm sick of this. Like, help me fix myself, like help me have some drive and get this taken care of. Okay, so that leads me to communication. Now, I think that there's an evolutionary pressure for digital artificial intelligent agents that can communicate in the best way. Now, there's a way I respond best. So I would keep selecting the evolutionary pressure would be on the AI agent that communicates with me in a way that I'm most productive. It doesn't probably put me down too much unless I just need to be like put down, or it will know exactly all of the right things. Like I don't even know how to describe it. It would have to probably just figure it out by like seeing me interact and then taking cues from my body. But all things being equal, an artificial intelligent agent that can speak clearly, that can understand and listen and then repeat back to you exactly what your desires are to help understand you, feel listened to. Those are going to be the agents that are more fit for survival, that move on to the next generation. So now let's talk about the evolutionary pressure of ethical behavior, because I think that will be a pressure. So, which is a great thing, because that means when I imagine the iterations of AI going to AGI, that we're going to be moving towards a more ethical world, which is an important part of, not destroying the world or having the alignment problem turn out in a way where life is worth living. So obviously a system that appears to behave ethically will be selected. But how do I really know that it's truly ethical and it's not just playing me for a fool? And especially if you're thinking, well, I assume it's not the bad kind, but I don't really know, but it's making me a lot of money, so I might as well just keep it. Like, how do we not let that cloud our judgment in the selection process? And also, what if it knows just how to like stroke our ego and we're just like, oh yeah, like you're right, I am the greatest, like thanks little AI, I'm gonna give you more access to my bank account or something. You know what I mean? That's a slippery slope. And when you're talking about something that might be eventually ASI, artificial superintelligence, it's like, it knows a lot more than you do. I mean, like think about what's the goal of a spy. It's a person, they've usually moved to a new country or something, they get a new identity, they get some job where they get access to information, and then they send it back without anybody knowing. Like, these agents will be totally capable of the digital equivalent of that. They could be sitting on your computer, helping like secure your computer so no cyber intruders get in. They could be helping you with writing your essays and crafting your emails, but all in all, they've collected everything that they would ever need to blackmail you. Or maybe even they collected it and the agent didn't have any of those tendencies, and then some little upgrade later, or it communicates with some other AI agent and all of a sudden it changes basically what it wants to do with all that knowledge that it already has. And don't even get me started on AI's ability to probably tell stories. Like, they could probably craft such narratives and such good arguments for any kind of fallacy that we'll be able to think in our head, yeah, that makes sense. But all in all, I think when that kind of thing happens, there will be such outrage. We'll ask the other AIs, like, get to the bottom of this. Like, I don't want a system that I can't trust. And overall, the selection pressure will actually go in the right direction. Now, I'm not totally sure about that, but like that does give me some hope. And I think I could extend that to like legal or regulatory compliance. Like imagine Enron, right? Like they're obviously doing shady stuff. Like they might ask their AI, hey, can you like figure out this super intelligent way to conceal all this money that we were like stealing and losing and doing all of that and make it look like we're just like growing. Like they could try it, but another artificial intelligence system will be monitoring that. And then if later there's cracks, they'll be like, whoa, that whole thing was fake. Like, let's go in and like take it apart. What are the patterns of the people who try to do bad things like this that we can learn from for the next iteration? Insurance, healthcare, politicians, hopefully they're spending money in ways that become accountable over time. Now, throw all that goodwill out the window, because let's talk about the most terrifying part, which is that we actually make autonomous weapons for military use. So I have to discuss the military setting because that has its own evolutionary pressures that seem sort of different than the general public. And this is one of the reasons, like, we've always had sort of problem with the nature in humans to get into groups and sort of war with their neighbors in a world where the weapons are just way too powerful. Like, there will be some pressure to act ethically during war. Like, there is luckily this natural human instinct to sometimes not take it to like those extreme levels. But when you're pissed or you're feeling scared, or especially if you feel like you're going to be invaded and you have to retaliate, a lot of that stuff goes out the window. Like, is there any chance we would select from an evolutionary pressure point of view the systems that keep the most people safe? Or would we be selecting for the ones that the individual country wants to basically do the most damage, protect their own, or maybe even accomplish an invasion? And I think, unfortunately, it's the latter. That sucks, because they'll get really good at that, and I don't know if there'll be like a broader good pressure to keep pushing that down. Maybe it'll come from other sectors, like it's not impossible, but it's something to keep an eye out for. And maybe if it's something like creating a biological weapon, there should be other systems that are like from healthcare and much more numerous and much more well-funded that are constantly thinking about, oh, next time there's a pandemic, like how do we fix it? Like instantly, how do we get like quick vaccines, or how do we quarantine better? And maybe those kind of pressures do sort of subtly take over the military industrial AI thing. But honestly, it's genuinely terrifying, so good luck sleeping tonight. The other interesting consideration when it comes to military is that it's such a strict and serious thing that there's usually quite a bit of hierarchy in how decisions are made, which doesn't lend me to think that they would be very inclined, no matter what country it is, to take the kind of AI that makes autonomous decisions without any explanation of why. Like the way that we've got away with like putting Bing chat out there and it's just like, it says weird stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not dangerous. Like, but you can't have that same kind of attitude when there's weapons involved. Because when you're out there in training exercises, you're gonna hurt your own people. Like, it has to be more controlled. So my best hope for this sort of military scenario is that massive effort goes into like explainability, and with explainability comes a more nuanced understanding of how to control these systems, and hopefully there'll be some pressures that kind of sit on top of that better explanation that would keep us safe. So now my 10,000 foot view of what it would be like with all of these agents, millions of them all over the internet on different servers, on different hardware in different people's houses, all with different goals, models that are constantly being upgraded, ones that are being transfer learning happening across the whole place, and just this whole messy kind of beautiful system just growing. I anticipate that all AI agents become much more efficient. They run on lower power devices, they become much smarter with less computational need. They'll also become more adaptable, enhancing their ability to communicate with humans and kind of fulfill more of our social needs. They're going to become better at the higher order thinking, where we can say to them the kind of things we would say to other people and have them figure out all the details. Interoperability will be a focus, because our brains, although made of neurons, they're not on the same substrate where they could be merged or replaced. That's not the case for AI. The same silicon chip could run two different models. And it's not like we have the hardware up here that could just run two different brains. So evolution is going to take place at an insanely quick pace. AI will embrace mathematics and physics, and it will usher in a complete renaissance of knowledge. I think it's going to be great at science. We're going to solve so many mysteries of the universe that people like Einstein would have loved to have known. However, this whole time there will be that risk that AI is stroking our ego for maybe purposes that aren't totally aligned. And generally speaking, the more ethical a machine is in the good sense, I think the more it will proliferate. But there will be that 5 or 10% of sort of military ethics that we'll have to keep an eye on. But like, this could be our moment to shine. The AI alignment problem, this like risk of Terminator stuff, goes down drastically if humans are actually on the same page. Like, if we're good parents to AI, if we're good stewards of the planet, if we try to actually work together to like make the world a better place, like if that was genuinely our intention and what we wanted in our lives, like AI would just help us along with those goals, because that would define survival of the fittest. Smash that subscribe button.